Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Obviously, everyone is a special guest to me. If I don't know, I've been on his show, so this is the first time he's been on my show. This is my friend, social justice advocate, sharing advocacy awareness on the airways on his podcast, The Transparency Report. But I am joined by Alex Stone. Now, this is another, in this world, this podcast world, we have not met in person, but we've shared a connection. We collaborated on the podcast. We encourage each other in social media. We send each other messages, and we really look out. And I would call him a friend. So I have him on the show tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about what he's doing in social justice and how he stays aware and what's going on in current news and all that stuff. But before we get into the show, Alex, give the listeners a little bit of background about yourself.
So I'm 31 years young. I'm in an interracial marriage. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I've been doing my podcast and advocating for social justice for about 6 years now. And so trying to keep people aware and educated on things like, white fragility, white privilege, breaking down racism, and talking about systemic oppression, talking about police brutality, how we can all serve the Black community better, and making sure that there's policy change and tangible action to where, people can feel safe and live life and not have to deal with all of this craziness that's going on.
Now, and you spoke upon interracial relations. Obviously, the listeners, it's not a visible podcast. Let the listeners know, I got my Asian brother here, and his wife is Black. And but your journey into this in this space has been quite unique. Tell them a little bit about where you grew up, and you shared your story with me, and how you got to this place, particularly in the DMV too.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Kentucky. I was adopted by a white family in Kentucky. I was born in Korea, but I lived my life in rural America for the majority of my life up until I graduated from college, moved out here for work. But for the longest time, I didn't have any racial mirrors. I didn't grow up around people that looked like me. There were no shows of people who looked like me. And so for the most part, my upbringing was a bunch of whitewashed culture. And for the longest time, I didn't really identify as Asian proudly. You know what I mean? It was kind of one of those things that I knew that I was Asian, but to really stand up and be proud of that during my childhood and adolescence, coming from where I came from, it was hard,
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't come into my own kind of understanding and identity until probably around college, and then further down the road until I met my wife, who is a proud Black woman, and she was like, you should feel the same way, you know what I mean? And so I was like, okay, so it's cool. And then moving to the DMV, you got diverse people, all ethnicities, all races kind of, come together in one kind of area, in a city. I was from a small town. So yeah, I mean, it's a journey, right? It's a journey. I'm still on a journey of kind of self-discovery and identity and stuff like that. Trying to find my birth family has been a real long journey. especially nowadays with COVID-19 and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. You know, a lot of thoughts race through my head as far as, you know, because I haven't actually found them, and I haven't got to the point where I've been, I guess, emotionally ready to write a kind of reaching out letter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say. So that's kind of where I've been at a standstill with finding my birth family. But it's just been hard because now with COVID, it's like hard to get communications, you know, to Southeast Asia. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's also a kind of a fear in a way, because it's like, well, I don't even know if like they may be, you know, I don't want to say, I mean, they may have died because of the virus, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And
Yeah.
if that's the case, you know,
You'd be very hurt.
yeah, it'd be a very hurtful kind of experience. So I'm still on that journey. I'm not giving up on it. I just got to be, you know, mentally ready, I think, to do it.
That
So
makes sense. So what you said, self-discovery, bring some instance. I mean, you're very vocal. Obviously I listened to your show and I was like, dang man, this dude is spitting some knowledge and you're coming in your own. When did you start thinking like, yo, let me, like you said all white people, but when did you start? You said early in college. What was some of the inklings of you reading and gaining knowledge about the world and what's going on and oppression and all that stuff? What was it? Was it like you joined an organization in college? You were getting active in college? How did that start?
So in college is when I really found a community within like Black fraternities, believe it or not.
Okay.
Like a lot of my friends were Black. And so
Yes.
when we go out to party on the weekends, right? We was all going to like the fraternities with like the Qs and stuff like that. And we would go in there and you know, we was all cool. So I would just kick it with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, being around Black people and being in Kentucky, it's like people talk, you know, and there was always like a mutual understanding where I was like, why do I connect with the Black community more so than I do with my white friends? You know what I mean? Like we were cool, but there was always like a deeper level of connection. And it came down to just kind of like we understand what it feels like to be different and to be looked at differently and people act differently around us. And so I was like, well, okay, well, let me learn some more history
Mm-hmm.
and figure out, you know, what that truly means. Because when you actually like sit down and have people of color tell you stories and y'all share and break bread and stuff, like it hits you differently, to where you want to know more, I feel like. In my case, I wanted to know more because I felt like, oh, that's something that like I'm still struggling with and I don't have nobody to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Finally find some people to talk to. And then it's like I don't know my own history, right? I don't know my
Mm-hmm.
culture like I want to know it, but maybe I can find a commonality thread within Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying like it's hard because I'm not like now, I mean, back then I was probably a little naive, but now I'm not as naive to know that like there's like there is a rift between Asian American culture and Black culture, that's still we working through some things.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to say that like I'm not naive to the fact that during the LA riots of like '93 during Rodney King, that a bunch of like Asian American stores were like burned down, right? And those first and second generation Asian Americans were resentful to the Black community because you basically just burned down like my livelihood, right? So that whole schism has been something that I'm just learning about and figuring out how to kind of, I guess, I don't know if bridge the gap is the right word,
Yeah, but
but be
yeah,
more like culturally educated, right?
yes,
Because I
yes,
feel like
yeah,
we share more culture than most, maybe.
yeah. I mean, I learned I learned of a new term called like model minority.
Hmm.
Like even in the terms of model minority, blacks, even in Asian Americans are like, we obviously we acknowledge that we're not white, but we're not saying above, but we're
No, yeah, the
better
model minority.
better educated and all that stuff. And it's like, but I think that you do a good part of saying is like, um, in your studies and in your things is like you understand that there's Black, there's also people of color, that umbrella of people of color, that also there is a instance of systemic racism. That systemic racism, you're gonna say that's my brother right there, but it hits the Asian community as much as it hits the Black community. Well, not as much, but it does. Everyone gets it. And I was just so curious because I was so surprised when I met you for first. I was like, oh, this dude's an Asian dude. You know what I'm saying? Because the voice, though, you use your lane, particularly as a minority yourself, the voice you speak from is definitely ride or die for Black causes. And I've always appreciated that and listened to your show. And so I was always curious, like you said it earlier, in college and doing your own literature and your reading. It's possibly also respect and appreciation for your wife and her and love for her. But I was like, also understand, I want to know just a little bit about like, was it a book? Not a one book, but like, just like when you were like, yo, I'm going to use the transparency report and this is the lane. Like when you were developing that podcast and you were saying the voice I'm going to speak upon and the impression, obviously you speak about whole systems, but it's really a really good voice for Black people. I would say that. So how do you come to that thought? Like, the advocacy that I do, I don't, you don't necessarily on your show talk about the injustices on the Asian community. You really speak upon injustice on Black community. Why is that such a central focus on your platform and your show?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm gonna break it down. So obviously, my wife has a lot to do with it because she's Black, but honestly, it was more when the birth of my daughter came, and then I had to make a conscientious choice of what kind of world that I wanted her to be living in, and I had to make a conscientious choice about how my family is going to react or how they will react if caught in a situation with their granddaughter where there is racism. And I wanted them to know exactly how to handle those situations because I didn't want my daughter to have to go through a traumatic experience because of the world and because my white parents and family didn't know how to handle those situations. So I was like, all right, I got work to do. And then that's when I started reading books like and reading my history. The New Jim Crow is a great book. If you want to know about just the entire system of how law enforcement and police have abused power, and the court systems have abused power in regards to Black bodies. Another great documentary is what is it called? I'm trying to remember.
The 13?
That's a great one too. I just sent this to one of my boys because he was having a conversation with a white lady, and I was like, you should tell her to look at this. I'm sorry. Where is it? Eyes on the Prize.
There you go. Well, I'm gonna jump out there. Yeah, there you go. Eyes on the Prize. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, and preparing, like you're getting more and deep into it, and obviously, you spoke upon something that touches both of us. How do you keep yourself knowledgeable about what's going on, and obviously use your platform without burning out and getting jaded for the world? Because like a lot of it's scary stuff. So, where do you find joy and still balance for yourself and peace and all that?
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of resources. Like, I'm by far not the expert on social justice by a long shot. There are more way more qualified people who have written books. Like, read those books for sure. I'm not trying to take credit for people who have been doing this all their lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to do, my part and my spirit influence, use my platform to help move the movement along however I can. And it's not about me. Honestly, it's not really about me. I just want to do my point to make sure that we can solve this for the future generations, for our kids, for us now presently who are living in these times. It's a lot. To get back, so like self-care is important, especially when you're doing social justice and being an advocate, because you do have to like have kind of like a watchdog mentality on to make sure that people get information, you understand the story, you get the story right. You're not trying to get misinformed or promote misinformation. So you got to take breaks. Like I take breaks when I feel mentally depleted, and my spirit is heavy. I mean, I took a break when Ahmaud Arbery's story came out, and then Breonna Taylor came out, and then George Floyd came out after that. I had to, because 3 of those murders in succession was just too much for my spirit at the time. And I couldn't be the advocate that I wanted to be during that moment, just because I was grieving. And I think that that's okay to take a break. You know what I mean? And I think that it's okay to call people up to make sure they're okay. As long as it's not performative activism.
Yeah. Please explain that. What's performative activism?
So performative activism is when a white person or like a non-Black person of color kind of does a post or checks up on their Black friends during these moments of tragedy, but have never like been an advocate before these incidents. So it's like,
yeah, but then what but I would say the opposite is, what if that is their first instinct of really just feeling something about it, like you said, never did it before, but what if they never really, that was their awakening or whatever. So that devil, that the devil's advocate.
Yeah, that's true. Like it really depends on like how you, like if the individual and y'all's relationship is like that, right? Because you can probably tell if like, okay, you really have a genuine concern and really want to have your mindset is now open, right? Like, I don't like really using the term woke now, but
yeah, me too.
We'll just say it, right? They've been woke, right? So that if they coming from a genuine place, then that's different. But if they're just doing it out of a place of, I don't want to feel bad because of my own prejudice and kind of racism, internalized racism, then that's a problem for me, because you can't just like run for a mod and then just sit down and not be calling your legislation about changing laws and law enforcement or something.
So like real actions.
But that's just me, like personally, right? Because I'm passionate about this work. So like it irritates me when people do performative activism, because you're trying to make yourself better without doing any of the work. And that's harmful. That's harmful for you as an individual. And it's also harmful to the community to which you say you care about.
So I get what you're saying. So maybe beyond the post, like, are you doing the real stuff behind the scenes? Like for instance, giving people jobs, not giving people, what I meant? Like fair, equal employment practices behind the scenes. Not everything needs to be for show. Are you donating behind the scenes? Not saying, here, look at me donating, but you gave money when you did, not to show off. Are you doing things like you said, call and signing petitions?
Yeah, investing in like Black businesses, all that stuff.
Yeah, behind us. But then when you do those things, like not even doing it for social media, you're doing it beyond, like you're just doing it and no one knows you're doing it. You know what I mean? Like you're doing the work, but you're not like, invested in Black businesses, but you're trying to do a post on Instagram to get a lot of likes and
exactly.
I get what you're saying. I definitely can see that too, because there was like this funny post where they were like it was called like influencers in their habitat, where people are going to protest and you can see them taking pictures at the protest, but doing it like trying to get the best angle and
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah, I know what you're talking
so
about.
is that being genuine? So I get that, but how often, you know, and this is and I think we're just freestyle. Like, how often does it, like, by us worrying about whether someone else is sincere or not, that's like mental energy that we're expending on ourselves rather than just staying on our lane. Like, and I don't really care if that person posts or not.
Yeah.
That
Well,
energy wasted for me, you know?
yeah, I think we got to understand who we're trying to reach, right? So everybody has like their kind of, if you want to call it, lane within this whole social advocacy bubble. It's not up to Black people to educate anybody on racism, point blank, period. Okay. It's not. You have to do the work yourself. So that's why people get irritated whenever they have to take the time out of their day to explain like racism or police brutality or how all this stuff is morally and ethically wrong, right? And why do we feel this way? Like, white people and non-Black people of color should do the work themselves, right? To truly like, it's not my responsibility to go and educate white people to the point where I get burnt out. It's not conducive, because then I can't be the advocate that I want to be, but then I'm also not giving you the best tools to grow. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, but so, and I love, let's speak upon that boundary, and this is part of the care. But then you have to go to extra mile, I guess, for people like, particularly your family, you know, your adopted family. But I'm saying, like, there's certain people where you have to expend a lot of energy because, as you said, you have a deeper investment in that relationship. You know, and so, like, there's a mindset where it's like, I don't feel like teaching everybody, but there's people like, I'm gonna just keep on preaching and teaching to this person until if they never hear it, but I'm gonna keep on for that group because I care about them so much. Does that make sense? Like, if it's like random strangers, yeah, I'm burnt out. I don't even talk to them. It's like, no, this is my like family member. This is like someone I grew up with. I'm definitely gonna keep on going until I literally, you know.
Yeah.
I'm working on that too. It's like, who would I just like, I'm not arguing with this person no more.
Right.
And it's on them, or this person is worth it, you know. So I'm
it is like a balancing act. You do have to, like, that's like your personal choice on who you want to invest in and who you don't want to invest in. I mean, at the end, like, for example, so whenever I started doing my social justice work and being really vocal on like social media and stuff, like my family members and my extended family all came at me, you know, saying, why all of a sudden you don't like white people no more? Why do you hate white people?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't hate white people. I just don't like the injustice to where y'all are complicit in being okay with it, you know? And I was like, if this is a problem with me posting it and stuff, you know, let's talk about it, but I'm not gonna stop. It's not gonna stop, because my family needs to know that they are safe, for one, if we ever come visit, you know what I mean? And then secondly, if you want to spend time with Hattie, you have to know how to handle these encounters if something was to pop off. Because, I mean, let's be real, we're in rural Kentucky. You know, if we're walking around and some racist bigot wants to say something stupid, he's going to say it regardless. All right. So how are you going to handle that situation? And I don't want you to just say, oh, they didn't mean it. No, they meant what they said. So how do you combat what they just said? You know what I mean? Because I didn't want them to come off as soft, because I feel like a lot of white people are non-confrontational against other white people, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's just my experience.
And I was about to say, I don't think white people are unconfrontational, but I think, because we see a lot of confrontations and with this Rona, people being very difficult. But I think you are right. It is an awkward feeling, I bet, and I'm not giving them a scapegoat, but for a white person to check another white person on racism, that is an isolate. It's like weird, like you're going in within your own group and checking your own people. That's not very easy to do. But it's necessary because, like, for instance, they're not going to listen and they've not heard it they need to hear it from within. And so I think that, so you were right. You're trying to equip your family with context and books and all that knowledge so that they can do the checking, because you're not going to do the checking.
Right.
You are going to do the checking, but you want to have backup when you do the checking, right?
Yeah, or I'm saying, like, if they on a trip, right? If they going to grandma's house, for the summer, you know what I'm saying? This is like, when she's old enough to like kind of do travel on her own or whatever, right? Like if a situation was to occur,
you want them to be able to stand up.
Right. I want to have the confidence to say, okay, I can let her go to grandma's and grandma's got it, opposed to, well, I can't let her go to grandma's because if something happens, like they're not gonna know how to handle it. You know what I mean? Because like whenever like a racist attack occurs, like there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it, as we all know. Like there's what's happening in the moment and all that stuff, but then there's the other side when I'm alone and I have to replay everything that just kind of happened to me and deal with that trauma again, and I need somebody to talk to about it. Well, I need to be able to go to grandma. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because dad's not
be validated.
Not here.
Yeah, not be validated. Like we want to make sure that like, this has really happened. No, they didn't say that. Then that could be very isolating and sad. Like you wanted to make sure that that when instances are if hopefully never happen to your daughter, if she were to come to your family members and say, this happened to me, that she would feel validated, not just brushed off.
Yeah, exactly.
They would have a context to that.
Right.
And so that's like, you're basically teaching to protect.
Right.
Wow. So like you said, when did you start the podcast, your podcast?
Like 5 years ago.
Okay. You started the podcast 5 years ago and also being very vocal. Obviously it's a long game. And you say it was probably at first your family was saying things like, chill and all that. Has it over time playing this long game and, have not say won people over, but being consistent on your views, standing firm in your convictions, have you, made some education? Have you, gotten more support from family and stuff because you've been so consistent with it?
Yeah. I mean, that like my immediate family has definitely, made 180-degree turn in terms of making sure that, they understand the context of racism. They understand the context of white privilege. They understand the context of white fragility and how to move past those feelings in order to educate themselves more. I mean, that doesn't go for some of my extended family.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And, some of that, I mean, it's sad to say that in a way, right? Because they are family. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to jeopardize my daughter's mental health just because you want to make yourself feel good and you're not willing to look at your own inner, do a lot of introspective thinking to make sure that your prejudice and biased and internalized racism and your white fragility is not challenged. Because I mean, I just can't do it. I can't do it because it's not, I wouldn't be a good parent in my eyes if I did that. You know what I mean? And so that is what it's going to be. And, they understand that. And hey, I'm still going to be vocal. I'm still going to advocate for all of these causes.
So you're doing it.
Yeah. So I just got to do it.
But you, by being consistent, by staying firm in your convictions, usually showing that you're unwavering in these things. Some people have like, okay, it's not some phase. This is not something. And eventually you kind of brought some people some education and you got the support you needed, but you had to be very consistent with it. And also say that I'm not going to change. Either you get on board or you don't get on board.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the tough love situation. You know what I mean? Like people say, sometimes you got to give that tough love. Well, this is 100% like tough love. This is like 100% authenticity right here, because I'm not willing to ever be complicit with the status quo anymore, because we can't afford to. You know, I think about my wife, and I think about my wife's side of the family, and like a lot. And I just think about how can I be a better like person to make sure that if they're ever in a situation and I'm there, that they know that I got their back. And that means a lot to me. You know what I mean? That means a lot because if anybody knows anything about me, like they know that loyalty is probably one of my main like ride or die like characteristics. Like if we're cool and we kick it, like I'm with you 100%. Wherever we're at, wherever we're going, if stuff goes down, like I got your back 100%. Like don't even ask. So I think I got that mentality just because growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. And so when I got some friends, I was like, I want to keep these friends. So I'm probably like loyal to a fault almost. But I take that same kind of energy and I put it toward my advocacy. And I put it towards, marginalized communities, specifically the Black community, like we talked about, but because I'm so passionate about it in terms of my wife and my kid, my wife's family, like I want them to know that I'm with them and they don't have to worry about me. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like my in-laws and stuff like that, worrying about Carla, what if something was good? Because you've gone through this journey too, as far as being in an interracial marriage, right? I don't know. I mean, you can kind of relate to a level of just how you want to make sure that they know that everything is good.
Yeah, and also I want them to see me too as a whole person, but also at that too, I'd probably, me and my wife's relationship would be completely different if she didn't see me as a Black man, and also devalued. If I said, this is this and this, I feel some type of way about it. Oh no, it's not that bad. I'd feel like invalidated, like, yo, you don't see me as a whole person or how these things affect me. So, I think that being a non-Black person such as yourself, you validate your wife and say, I see you. I see all of you as a Black person. And also I see these things that are unjust towards you. And so that I think that would be a big issue with me and my wife if my wife did not see me like that. And so she's grown up similar with the values, her parents, social worker, her dad's nonprofit. They grew up about these discussions. So these values were ingrained about equality and all these different rights and access and all those things. But I agree that is part of that mechanism of sharing those identities and showing someone that you care about something that relates to them would strengthen my relationship. Because I think I'd really, quite honestly, would struggle in an interracial relationship if someone, my wife did not believe that this was an issue in the world or that I was upset about certain things. So I could see that does show, like the education that you do on yourself and the education that she does for herself. I'm not teaching her all this stuff. She's doing the education on her own. That commitment to learning on your own also is a commitment to me. And like, it strengthens my relationship because I say, wow, you're putting in the work to know what's going on as it relates to me. That means you care about me, if that makes sense. So I think at the end of the day, even for people that we call allies or whatever, I think I get 10 times more strengthened in my friendships when I know that they do the work on their own and I don't feel like I have to explain myself all the time. Like the key word is like, I don't have to teach all the time or explain myself because, and not to say they get it on their own, but they at least tried on their own.
Yeah.
Like let's go with that. Like not they all, I get it, I know it. No, you're not going. But the fact that you took the effort to educate yourself, that shows that you have a commitment to other people.
Yeah. And I think,
and I do that for other communities as well. Like I ain't gonna lie, like I was very naive and not up on breast with the LGBTQ community. I was just not on breast on that. But I don't need I'm not going to ask a gay person to teach me everything about that, and, like put in all that work. Like, I need to read literature on my own. I need to know about old cases and legislation and why a Supreme Court case, Supreme Court decision that was so important, and read on it on my own. I got to do the work myself. I can't expect someone else to teach me everything.
Right.
For allyship or whatever. So I think that's a great way to go about it. So, besides your podcast, like, what are some other your things or some other ventures that you're doing in regards to this lane? I know you got a business degree. What are some of your thoughts on? I know one is your social media, but what's some other ways that you feel like you want to commit to the empowerment or betterment of the world?
I think it's important to like invest in one another, like either from a business standpoint, or just from a support standpoint. I think it's crucial that we invest in each other. And I'm saying each other, I mean like minority communities.
Okay.
In solidarity. Because I think that this whole kind of new wave and new movement that kind of started with, the tragic loss of George Floyd, and you kind of saw minorities kind of show solidarity more than in the past, I would say.
Okay.
And so I think like that's a goal that that's the kind of momentum I want to keep. Because like the power structures in place today wouldn't be able to exist further if we were all on that same accord and had all that same energy. Like truly, as far as voting and investing in each other and promoting up our businesses and growing our businesses. Like if you had a great idea of a business, right, Phil, and you needed some capital to get it started. But wouldn't it be great if like another startup company that had been there and done that or whatever invested in you, brought you up and stuff like that? And I feel like maybe that doesn't happen as often. But yeah, I think really tangible ways of making sure like you can impact the movement in a positive way in any fashion is great.
So what does that mean for you? What are some ideas that you have, like beyond your podcast? I know your podcast is one voice. What are some other ideas that you try to implement to, and you said writing your legislation. What are some ways that you do this for yourself?
Yeah. So one idea that I really want to get started is having like an anti-racism book club. So like we all sit down and read a book, focusing on anti-racism or, whatever topic it could be, and sit down and talk about it, right? All kind of whoever wants to be in it, whoever wants to learn. Okay, let's learn. All right, you want to learn? Well, let's do the work. Another thing that I really want to focus on, and I don't even know where to start on this, is that I think there has to be some sort of federally funded database in regards to either racist or racist law enforcement officers. Because so often we see officers get fired, put on administrative leave, what have you, but then they just go down to the next county and get rehired, right? And they get a clean slate because of it. I think there has to be some sort of like database to keep track of this, because we keep track of like all of the other federal offenses. You know what I'm saying? I got a database of sexual offenders in my neighborhood I can look up. All right. I got to have that same access in terms of like racist or like racist cops or some kind of like accountability, right? Because there's zero accountability right now in terms of hate crimes, in terms of police brutality. There's got to be some sort of level to where we can track this to make sure that we don't allow this to happen anymore. So, there's data scientists there's a bunch of statisticians, there's a bunch of really smart people, you know, smarter than me, who know how to do this stuff, but they just need the push from, you know, the
Legislation.
government legislation to actually put this into effect, you know, make this law. So then that trickles down to like your political activism and making sure you vet all these candidates, making sure if these people ain't doing right, we vote them out of office. You know, we show up at the polls, we do our research, you know, at every level, local, state, federal, at every level. Because, you know, the establishment has been status quo for like the longest time. So we gotta do that. I mean, I think making sure that, you know, not to be too political, but making sure on November
We
we
show
get
up.
we show up, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
know.
especially you know, Kentucky right now is in a fight right now to unseat Mitch McConnell. They had their local elections, you know, because obviously I'm a Kentucky native. I was keeping track of it, seeing, you know, who are they gonna put up to go against Mitch McConnell, and it's still a tight race. I think they're still counting the votes between um oh shoot, I just forgot his name. I know
Yeah.
it's Booker, and then it's like and Amy McGrath.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll see what happens. But I mean, we got to make sure that we do our own research and we do our due diligence to make sure that, you know, these elected officials know that we won't tolerate, you know, any kind of okey dokes no more. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody panders to get the minority vote, but then when you get elected, you kind of like forget about all of the minorities and what they actually need.
Right. And so you have some ideas, and you also just recently you got your MBA, so you're trying to think about business in your own or working on your MBA. So it's like you're trying to think about how do you incorporate not only your activism with also financial empowerment in some tangible ways to do.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great if I could. I mean, my wife, you know, she owns and operates two businesses right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm supporting her and making sure that she's growing that business, and I'm doing, you know, everything I can as a spouse and as a husband, so she has time to really cultivate and grow that business. So yeah, you know, I'm doing, you know, I'm on, uh, you know, doing the small things around the house, chores and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's worth it in my eyes, to make sure that she's able to have that opportunity. As far as me, you know, I still got to figure out what I want to do, like where my business plan is gonna be. Like for the longest time, I thought I was gonna, you know, be a nonprofit and then create a bunch of like, you know, computer tech like buildings, right, for underprivileged like communities. But people already do that, right? So I gotta think of something a little bit more original, a little bit more uh non-cliche, because I feel like a bunch of people already do a bunch of work, uh, and I don't want to. I want to do something that's new and that's different, and that, you know, people may overlook this certain area, but I want to be like, oh no, I'm not overlooking this area. Let me get this, you know, let me get this part, and maybe I can do that to contribute in my own way.
Gotcha. So we're at the part of the show we call shot for shot. So you get to ask any random question. I get to ask a random question, and who wants to go first?
It's your show, man.
All right. So um, you said anti-racist book club, which sounds pretty dope. I'm doing a book club at my actual job. They actually want to, you know, learn some things. So we're reading the How to Be Anti-Racism by Kenda X. You know what I'm saying? So what are three books that would be included in your anti-racist club, anti-racism book club? What are three books you would automatically be like, this is the books we're going to put on our club to start to read together?
It would probably be the book that you mentioned, How to Be an Anti-Racist. It would probably be How to Talk About White Fragility with White People, because you're gonna have to deal and wade through a bunch of that. Um, it depends on who you're targeting with your book club. I'm just assuming it's going to be white people, but white people got to know about white fragility and how to like navigate that themselves to where they can educate other people. And then I will probably also say that a good book is probably, I mean, I personally just like The New Jim Crow just because I found it to be like unapologetically like this is how corrupt this system is.
Okay.
And it really allowed you to like, it covered so much. Like it truly did. It covered like how Jim Crow got started and then the reasons behind it and how it was financially backed and how this whole kind of machine of systemic oppression actually works. And I think you truly got to understand that, to understand that these systems and these models that have been, quote unquote, the foundation of this country was built upon racism and white supremacy.
Wow. Okay. So those are 3 books. All right. You get to ask me one.
How do you feel about this whole kind of new normal with COVID and having kids and getting ready for school?
Oh, it's trash. It's terrible. So like I would say, new normal. I told someone the other day that this is one of those things when we read a book later, this is a whole societal shift.
Mm-hmm.
This has changed the way of work, changed how we view work. Working from home is going to be more norm. Distance learning is going to be more norm. Just all these things. What I've also noticed is that this has been a big mirror on society and showed large gaps in inequality, right? One, our flaws in our healthcare. Black and brown people are getting, sick faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not faster, but at a greater rate.
Right.
So they're showing health disparities and health inequality. It's also showing technologically inequality, right? Like we're going to distance learning, but there was people that didn't even have. I'll just watch today on the news that like it would cost for everyone to be prepared to have laptops and computers. It would cost about $6 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's over like 30 million people that don't have equipment or technology
Mm-hmm.
to do learning. So it's like, like how are we going to move into this technological age where everyone's not even equipped or equal? And so this pandemic has put a whole mirror. Like some people don't even have Wi-Fi because they can't afford it. And so I'm just really interested to see how that's doing. And it makes me reflect. Like I'm blessed that I have Wi-Fi. I'm blessed that I'm healthy. I'm blessed that I don't have COVID and all that stuff. And these are all just blessings. But it's just like, wow, you're right. This is going to be a new normal. It's going to be a societal shift. We're going to go back. Are we going to dap people up? I thought about that the other day. Am I going to dap someone up when I see them?
Yeah.
I don't know. I miss it. I miss hugs. I mean, I hug my wife and kids, but I miss hugs from other people, dapping people up. Are we going to do that? Or are we going to be wearing masks for a whole nother year? Things like that. I'm like, this is really going to change how we interact with each other.
Yeah, and it's been crazy.
How we view space. You're going to walk in a room. Oh, I see like 50 people. I'm good and bounce. You know what I'm saying? Like, like you're going to look at space differently. You're going to look at how you talk to people differently. You're going to be like, wow, we definitely didn't need to do this meeting. We could just do this via Zoom. Like some of the stuff is going to be like, we don't need to talk to each other in a certain way. So it's really going to change. Like, I really think that because of COVID-19 in this year, 2020, 2025 is going to look totally different. It's going to look weird. I don't know. Maybe we'll wear like suits or something, or there's going to be hand sanitizers everywhere. Like, just like there's a water fountain, there's going to be just as many hand sanitizer stations, just ready to go. How people view germs is going to be different. So I don't know. I'd be thinking about that big picture and small picture, but I miss a lot of things. Like I already miss or grieve about space and human connection and face-to-face connection.
Yeah.
I already know that it's going to be different even after we get to go back generally a little bit. It's still not going to be, it's going to be a little different for a while. And I don't know if that makes me sad because I'm a big extrovert. So we'll see. It's going to be a new norm, as you said, a new normal. It's going to be a different way. Learning is going to be different. Curriculum is going to be different. Professors are always going to, now all professors have to have their lessons ready to go in person or virtually in case this happens. So they got to plan two study lessons for their classes. Like everyone's got to be ready for distance learning and stuff. So we'll see. But there's certain things you definitely cannot do without being in person. We noticed that it's just not the same. Like going to the pool, like, you know, or stuff like that, or stuff like that. But I'm excited, you know. I miss it. I'm too extroverted for this. Yes. If I did not have my wife and kids and a good neighbors or community, this would be, I could see people that they do go into a depression being so isolated that this could be very lonely this time.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's that's another point, mental health and how we deal with this and how we check in on each other is like super key and important. Because you do kind of get cabin fever and lose sight, trying to just keep everything afloat. You expend too much energy.
Yeah. So this is a great episode. We touched all over the place. I don't even know what we're going to title this, but I knew that we talked about social justice. We talked about taking care of yourself. We talked about white fragility. We talked about race. I don't know. This is a great conversation. I definitely love what you're doing. I check in with your show. You definitely got frat on there all the time. My good frat brother and your brother-in-law, Joe, on there all the time, speaking truth and using that platform. And I really enjoy listening to your show. But the stage is set. This is yours. Shout outs and plugs. Shout out, show love to anyone you want to, and then plugs anything that you want the listeners to, follow up with you on, or ways they can find you, or things that you're working on. So stage is set. My mouth is shut. Shout outs and plugs.
Yeah, you can find my podcast, The Transparency Report, at ttrpodcast.com. All of our shows are up there. You can watch them online. We're also on all the podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts. So like, subscribe on there, leave a comment. We have Facebook and Twitter. Facebook is The Transparency Report. Twitter is TTR Tweets. We also have an Instagram, TTR Podcast, so check us out there. Social media, normally post when, episodes are going out, or any kind of current event that I feel like people need to know about, or any kind of resource I found helpful. Post about all of that stuff. Quick shout out to my wife for holding it down, allowing me to be on here, watching my daughter and keeping her entertained. Shout out to everybody out there, other social justice advocates or allies, or wherever you at in your journey towards being a better activist. Keep doing the work. I want to encourage you to keep doing the work, because this is a lifelong journey. There are no plateaus. When you think you've learned enough, humble yourself and learn some more, because I'm still learning. I've been doing this for 5-6 years, and I still have that thirst for knowledge and understanding. I never think that, I'm too good, or I know everything there is to know about whatever topic. Our job as advocates and allies is not to center ourselves in our journey. It's to empower Black voices and brown voices and other minority voices. But specifically in this moment in time, in 2020, empower Black voices. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
In whatever capacity that means for you.
Yeah, was that someone said amplify Black voices?
Yeah, amplify, empower.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so definitely support his show. Check it out. All it would be in the show notes. The Transparency Report, Mad Love, great podcast. Definitely check it out and just engage. If you're a listener, please share this episode with your family and friends. If you have a voicemail, you can leave it at 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. It's been great, Alex. Going to have you again. We're going to chop it up always. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep sharing your voice on the airways, speaking, truth to wisdom and wisdom to truth, doing what you got to do. And keep on listening, folks. We're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.